Hey friends, so today we're going to continue doing Reader's Workshop book series, and today we're on session 10. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and here we go. Our focus today is how authors think about how whole stories in series will go. So I wish you guys were here, but help me fill in the blanks here. Whenever you come to school in the morning, you know the first thing you'll do is, you guys know it's the first thing you do when you come into class, right? Later in the day, you go to lunch, and then comes what? What do we do after lunch? You see, there is a way that our school day tends to go. It is the same with series and books, right? Once you read the first book, you'll start to know how the other books in the series will tend to go. That's just an example of a schedule, but you see what I mean? So it is the same with series books. The way we have a schedule throughout the day, it's kind of like a book series. When you read the first book, you know what's going to happen next and what's going to happen next because you have some familiarity with the book series. So today I want to teach you that when readers study and authors craft, they don't just notice the way authors use words and language. They also notice the way the whole story tends to go. And once readers get to know a series, they can think, oh yeah, I know how the book is going to go because I know how the series goes. Oh, I know how this Frog and Toad book is going to go because in all the other Frog and Toad books, they're always getting into something funny or they're always doing something and Toad's always being himself, lazy, and Frog's always being the nice, helpful one. So that's what it is. All right, so we're going to see if Arnold Lobel wrote the Frog and Toad series so that they tend to go the same way. The stories usually start off with Toad causing some sort of problem or having a hard time. Things usually get worse before they get better, and in the end, Frog often helps him out. Let's take a look at some of the stories. We've already read The Kite and Alone to see if this is true. All right, so this one is The Kite, right? Frog and Toad went out to fly a kite. They went to a large meadow where the wind was strong. Our kite will fly up and up, said Frog. It will fly all the way up to the top of the sky. Toad, said Frog, I will hold the ball of string. You hold the kite and run. Toad ran across the meadow. He ran as fast as his short legs could carry him. The kite went up in the air. It fell to the ground with a bump. Toad heard laughter. 3 robins were sitting in a bush. The kite will not fly, said the robins. You may as well give up. Toad ran back to Frog. Frog, said Toad, this kite will not fly. I give up. You must make a second try, said Frog. Wave the kite over your head. Perhaps that will make it fly. Toad ran back across the meadow. He waved the kite over his head. The kite went up in the air and fell down with a thud. What a joke, said the robins. That kite will never get off the ground. Toad ran back to Frog. This kite is a joke, he said. It will never get off the ground. We have to make a third try, said Frog. Wave the kite over your head and jump up and down. Perhaps that will make it fly. Toad ran across the meadow again. He waved the kite over his head. He jumped up and down. The kite went up in the air and crashed down into the grass. That kite is junk, said the robins. Throw it away and go home. Those robins are mean. Toad ran back to Frog. This kite is junk, he said. I think we should throw it away and go home. Toad, said Frog, we need one more try. Wave the kite over your head, jump up and down, and shout, up, kite, up. Toad ran across the meadow. He waved the kite over his head. He jumped up and down and shouted, up, kite, up. The kite flew into the air. It climbed higher and higher. We did it, cried Toad. Yes, said Frog. If a running try did not work, and a running and waving try did not work, and a running, waving, and jumping try did not work, I knew that a running, waving, jumping, and shouting try just had to work. The robins flew out of the bush, but they could not fly as high as the kite. Frog and Toad sat and watched their kite. It seemed to be flying way up at the top of the sky. All right, here's the other one. What do you guys notice so far? Do you guys notice something? So we know that in the previous one, we noticed that Toad was very like not hopeful, very negative, and Frog was very positive. So let's see if in this part of the book, let's see if this is the same thing. Let's see if Toad is a more negative attitude and Frog is a more positive attitude. Toad went to Frog's house. He found a note on the door. The note said, "Dear Toad, I am not at home. I went out. I want to be alone." "Alone?" said Toad. "Frog has me for a friend. Why does he want to be alone?" Toad looked through the windows. He looked in the garden. He did not see Frog. Toad went to the woods. Frog was not there. He went to the meadow. Frog was not there. Toad went down to the river. There was Frog. He was sitting on an island by himself. "Poor Frog," said Toad. "He must be very sad. I'll cheer him up." Toad ran home. He made sandwiches. He made a pitcher of iced tea. He put everything in a basket. Toad hurried back to the river. "Frog," he shouted, "it's me. It's your best friend Toad." Frog was too far away to hear. Toad took off his jacket and waved it like a flag. Frog was too far away to see. Toad shouted and waved, but it was no use. Frog sat on the island. He did not see or hear Toad. A turtle swam by. Toad climbed on the turtle's back. "Turtle," said Toad, "carry me to the island. Frog is there. He wants to be alone." "If Frog wants to be alone," said the turtle, "why don't you leave him alone?" "Maybe you are right," said Toad. "Maybe Frog does not want to see me. Maybe he does not want me to be his friend anymore." "Yes, maybe," said the turtle as he swam to the island. "Frog!" cried Toad. "I'm sorry for all the dumb things I do. I'm sorry for all the silly things I say. Please be my friend again." Toad slipped. Toad slipped off the turtle with a splash. He fell in the river. Frog pulled Toad up onto the island. Toad looked in the basket. The sandwiches were wet. The pitcher of iced tea was empty. "Our lunch is spoiled," said Toad. "I made it for you, Frog, so that you would be happy." "But Toad," said Frog, "I am happy. I am very happy. This morning when I woke up, I felt good because the sun was shining. I felt good because I was a frog. And I felt good because I have you for a friend. I wanted to be alone. I wanted to think about how fine everything is." "Oh," said Toad, "I guess that is a very good reason for wanting to be alone." "Now," said Frog, "I will be glad not to be alone. Let's eat lunch." Frog and Toad stayed on the island all afternoon. They ate wet sandwiches without iced tea. They were two close friends sitting together. So, if I was to read a new story like Down the Hill, which is about Frog and Toad going sledding, I can guess how the story might go. Toad will not want to go sledding because he will be too scared, right? Because he's usually the negative one. So I have a feeling in a story of them going down a hill, Toad will not want to go because he will be scared. But Frog will get him to go, maybe even trick him. Toad will go sledding and will be really scared, maybe even crash the sled. Frog will find him in the end and make him laugh somehow. Did you see how I can think about how the author writes a whole story? I can use that to help me think about how to get ready for the next story. When I read a new story in the series, I can really make good predictions about what will happen and how the story will go. So let's try this again. This time, let's take a look at some Magic Tree House books and see if we can find how they tend to go. Woo! The strange sound came from outside the open window. Jack opened his eyes in the dark. The sound came again. Woo! Jack sat up and turned on his light. He put on his glasses, then he grabbed the flashlight from his table and shone it out the window. A white snowy owl was sitting on a tree branch. "Whoo!" the owl said again. Its large yellow eyes looked right into Jack's. "What does he want?" Jack wondered. "Is he a sign? Like the rabbit and the gazelle?" A long-legged rabbit and a gazelle had led Jack and Annie to the Magic Treehouse for the last two adventures. "Whoo! Wait a second," Jack said to the owl. "I'll get Annie." Jack's sister Annie always seemed to know what birds and animals were saying. Jack jumped out of the bed and hurried to Annie's room. She was sound asleep. Jack shook her and she stirred. "What?" she said. "Come to my room," Jack whispered Jack. I think Morgan set another sign. In a split second, Annie was out of bed. She hurried with Jack to his room. Jack led her to the window. The snowy owl was still there. Hoo, said the owl. Then he raised his white wings and took off into the night. He wants us to go to the woods, said Annie. That's what I thought, said Jack. Meet you downstairs after we get dressed. No. He says go now, right now, said Annie. We'll have to wear our pajamas. I have to put on my sneakers, said Jack. Okay, I'll put on mine too. Meet you downstairs, said Annie. Jack pulled on his sneakers. He threw his notebook into his backpack. Then he grabbed his flashlight and tiptoed downstairs. Annie was waiting at the front door. They silently slipped outside together. Whew. The night air was warm. Moths danced around the porch light. I feel weird, said Jack. I'm going to put on some real clothes. You can't, said Annie. The owl said right now. She jumped off the porch and headed across the yard. Jack groaned. How did Annie know exactly what the owl said? He wondered. Still, he didn't want to be left behind, so he took off with her. The moon lit their way as they ran down their street. When they entered the Frog Creek woods, Jack turned on his flashlight. The beam of light showed shadows and swaying branches. Jack and Annie stepped between the trees. They stayed close together. Ooh! Jack jumped in fear. It's just the white owl, said Annie. He's somewhere nearby. The woods are creepy, said Jack. Yeah, said Annie. In the dark, it doesn't even feel like our woods. Suddenly, the owl flapped near them. Yikes, said Annie. Jack shone his flashlight on the white bird. As it rose into the sky, the owl landed on a tree branch right next to the magic tree house. And there was Morgan Le Fay, the enchantress librarian. Her long white hair gleamed in the beam of Jack's flashlight. So, based on what we just read, how would you describe how Magic Treehouse books tend to start? How do you think they would tend to start? So, let's take a look at another Magic Treehouse book to see if it starts in a similar way. So remember, something came out of nowhere to tell them to go, right? To tell them to go, I think, to the treehouse. So let's see if something happens here. Maybe something pops up and tries to get them to go somewhere again. So let's see. All right, let me take a sip. Chapter books, you have to read a lot of words. Help, a monster, said Annie. Yeah, sure, said Jack. A real monster in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania. Run, Jack, said Annie. She ran up the road. Oh, brother, thought Jack. This is what he got for spending time with his 7-year-old sister. Annie loved pretend stuff, but Jack was 8 and a half. He liked real things. Watch out, Jack, the monster's coming, said Annie. Jack didn't say anything. Come on, Jack, I'll race you, said Annie. No thanks, said Jack. Annie raced alone in the woods. Jack looked at the sky. The sun was about to set. Come on, Annie, it's time to go home, yelled Jack, but Annie didn't answer. Jack waited. Annie, he called again. Jack, Annie shouted. Come here, quick. Jack groaned. Ugh, this better be good, he said. Jack left the road and headed into the woods. The trees were lit with a golden late afternoon. Over here, called Annie. Annie was standing under a tall oak tree. Look, she said. She pointed at a rope ladder. It was hanging down from high in the tree. Wow, Jack whispered. At the top of the tree, there was a tree house, tucked between 2 branches. That must be the highest tree house in the world, said Annie. Who built it? Asked Jack. I've never seen it before. I don't know, but I'm going up, said Annie. No, we don't know who it belongs to, said Jack. Just for a teeny minute, said Annie. She started up the ladder. Annie, come back, said Jack. But Annie kept climbing. She climbed all the way up to the tallest branches. Jack sighed. Annie, it's almost dark. We have to go home. Annie disappeared inside the treehouse. Annie, Jack called. Hold on just a second. Okay. Annie disappeared inside the treehouse. I'm sorry, guys. You know, when you're doing stuff from home. My nephew's in 5th grade, so. Annie, Jack called. Jack waited a moment. He was about to call again. Then Annie poked her head out the treehouse window. Books, Annie shouted. What? Jack said. It's filled with books, said Annie. Oh, man, Jack thought. He loved books. Jack pushed his glasses into place. He gripped the sides of the rope ladder and started up. So did that book fit the way you think all Magic Tree House books tend to start? So what I noticed is that in the other book, something random happens, or they find something random. So in the first one was the owl, and then this one it was they found the tree house, and it's always Annie the one pushing for them to go, right? So it always starts off with Annie saying, let's go," and what's his name? Jack saying, "Oh gosh," you know. So that's what I've noticed. So when you're reading your books, you might find out some similarities that maybe they start the certain way when you read a series book. I want you to think about some series that you've read. How did your series book start off the same? What was similar? Okay. So that's it for today. You don't have an assignment today because I need you to do your iReady diagnostic test. Please take your time on that diagnostic test. I know you guys are going to do great. And that is really it for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful